Welcome back for another top-notch video, guys. This week we're talking about the 6th to the 10th of August. So let's get right into it. If you have a TSP, IRA, brokerage account, this channel is for you. We talk about gains in the major indices, the S&P, Dow Jones, and whatnot. So really pay attention. Please subscribe to the channel if you are interested in that stuff. As you can see, for TSP users, we go through the C, S, I, and F fund. For Roth IRA brokerage people, we talk about ETFs, which are the ETF IVV, VXF, EFA, or AGG. You can find these signals through Google or other means, or you can look at my videos on how to track these funds. That being said, let's kind of go over a broad market overview, and then we'll get more specific into the funds. So this week, in regards to our funds, the only thing I really wanted to bring up for kind of a broad perspective is the dollar did end up rallying quite to almost 0.5% on Friday, and we know what that does to the I fund or EFA. Big push down for EFA. The only other thing really is we had a lot of light volume for this week, and again, this information comes from TSP website. So just keep that in mind. For your TSP folks, let's look at the numbers for this week. For this week overall, we saw gains for the F fund and the S fund. We were a little down on our C fund, and very large percentage down on that I fund due to the dollar rallying for the most part. And then all the life cycle funds were down for the week. That being said, I'm going to bring up this other chart. This is from Grow My TSP or whatnot, but it's good for you guys that have the Roth IRAs and whatnot too. So I'm just going to go over from very general charts. So based on long terms, I have some things I would like to look at, and these are pulled from stockcharts.com. This is a weekly, 3-year weekly chart of the C fund or the S&P 500 v SPX. Okay, as you can see, we don't have a whole lot of concern since beginning of 16. Basically, we've always been above this line. The correction in February came close, but we never did close below this line. We're still above that. So on a long-term perspective, we're doing very well. On a short-term perspective for that C fund, we did see a little bit of a drop. We're trying to beat that February high, and as you can see, we didn't necessarily get there. We got really close, and this is a big trading range. We could see this come back down to the bottom of the box before we see this make new highs. So we are still in this correction. It's been a very, very long correction, but with stocks, we've had a great couple of months, and we had a positive April, positive May, positive June, positive July, pretty much. So I'm sorry, July was not or June was not positive for the C fund, but the for July it was. So we've had some good gains for this month, and with just such an opening in this box, just really keep that cautious. When we look at the signs earlier on, we'll kind of show you where we think for us. As you know, we made a move to the C fund earlier this month, so we did make some good cash towards the beginning of this month, but we only have one left now with TSP, so keep that in mind. These are some of our indices, and are they rolling over or not? I don't really know that they are just yet, but we are going to keep that in mind as we're moving forward. The S fund is hitting some serious resistance at 1455.80. We saw a cup and handle kind of form here, and that's usually a very, very bullish pattern, and it just kept knocking at the door at 1455 and never did end up crossing that line. We saw it gap down a little bit, and it's always at 50-day, it's been bouncing off that 50-day moving average quite a few times ever since May, and there's not a whole lot more room for this to run. So either we're going to see this hit a higher high, or we're going to see it come back down, and possibly I don't know where the next line would be. Maybe the 1373 line. That is really low though, and it is on our indices. We'll show you the Dow Jones is tending down for our indicators. That being said, EFA, we had a 2% gap through the 50-day moving average, which is huge. We thought maybe the 50-day moving average would hold it. It did not. So we have some measures to look into in regards to this. This stock might be, if you were not in this stock, it might be a good chance to get into it. Usually when it hits this dotted line, we tend to see it hit support usually. Seeing that we always have kind of a lower low or lower high happening from lower high, or double top, lower high, lower high. I think we could possibly start to see it drop below that line, but we'll look at it from the chart perspective a little bit on. This is just our broad indices. Indicators do look negative though, so that is interesting. Again, those are Jerry's comments and charts from Grow My TSP. That being said, let's get into our review. And so the first thing we're going to start with, like we always do, is the C Fund or IVV ETF. That is the S&P 500. Like I said, with the S&P 500 on Friday, we did take that dip. We're coming up against that 20-day moving average. So far for the month of July and most of August, it's been above that 20-day moving average. So I'm looking for that first support line here. If it doesn't hit that, we could see it come down to that 280 line. If it gets any below the 280 line, we could be in trouble. We could see it come back down before we see that. Really disappointed. I thought we might see higher highs, be out of the correction for the year, but that did not seem to be the case. Almost this entire year we've been in a correction for the C Fund or IVV. And let's look at it from a chart perspective. This is our weekly chart fundamental perspective of IVV or the C Fund. And the reason we have a majority of our funds here is because we've been having some very good energy come up ever since this last dip in July. And we've been at for the DO, we've been at 170 and it went up to 221, and now we're at 256 even with that close on Friday. So that's a very strong weekly chart. Our blue line is above our red line, but on our 2-day chart we are seeing degradation of that. Typically we stay with the weekly chart. Our price action, we see a spinning top here. Usually means a lot of indecision of what people are thinking. I think this chart for the most part is really going to need to go one way or another. I said that kind of last week, but I just don't know. I wish they'd draw some new lines in here so we could look at some things. I don't think we're going to see it get below that 280 line. This bottom channel line here is getting really, really close to where that's at. But like I said, markets can do anything that they want. But I'd like to see a top drawn in line here soon to see where FinViz puts that at. That's our IVV for the most part. We're watching it very closely. If we end up having a weekly decline, we will probably get out of this fund for the rest of the year. The problem is we only have one ITF left for TSP folks. Brokerage folks, you can get in and out as much as possible, but I'm not willing to take the next 2-3 weeks and put my money in the G Fund and not be able to move it out of the G Fund. Why IVV either goes up or down. I'd rather just be in the fund and just take whatever it's going to take to do so. One of the Facebook groups I follow, the swing traders haven't even moved yet, so it's just not even worth. It's just worth staying in for right now until I see some serious changes with this. I mean, we're still even on this line here. We're still even above with the 2-day. The blue line is still above the red line here, which is still a positive sign. We're starting to see it get closer, but we haven't crossed yet. Last time we crossed was back in June, so it's been a long time, and we've made some good gains with that C Fund. Moving on to the S Fund or VXF. With VXF, we are in the middle of our trading range, so right in the middle between our lower line and upper line. In regards to that, like I said, we're seeing a lot of resistance at this 122 line. We've been seeing it for almost 2-3 months now, where it's just hit this 122 line and has not crossed that. And like I said, with that 20-day moving average, it's really bouncing between those. We did see it get a little bit below. It hasn't wanted to get below the 50-day moving average since a very long time. We're just right below it for the most part. We are seeing the trading line getting close to that 50-day moving average, and I don't think we'll see it go anything lower than 120 at this point, but we are, on a technical perspective, not doing well, and that's why we don't have a whole lot of money crazy enough for the week, which is why we always diversify our funds. This was the only fund that was up, so we did have a positive week. But with VXF or the S Fund, from a weekly chart, we are a lot of indecision here. Blue is right on the red line. I don't really know where this is going. As you can see, price really hasn't moved since the middle of June. I mean, we've just been just stagnant for almost a month and a half. I don't really know where that'll go. On a weekly chart, I don't have a whole lot of funds dedicated here just because that's never good to have funds in this when the indices are headed down based off probability. And on a 2-day chart, we could possibly see it pull up that weekly chart. We are coming out of a negative 2-day chart, but like I said, just a lot of, as you can see, just not a lot of movement on this chart. Not like we saw since June, or like in May or June, early part of June. So on a 4-hour perspective, it looks like it's going back down for another dip. So just not a lot of movement on this chart. Kind of frustrating for traders just to have that like that. So we'll see where that goes. Moving on, we're going to look at the iFund or EFA ETF. With that is our international markets. With our international markets, we took a massive drop, like I said, on was it Friday because of the dollar rally. This fund has been definitely in, I would say, almost a bear market. We had our drop there in February, and it just has not recovered like the S fund or as much as the C fund, and we just continue to see. Here we saw a double top, like I mentioned earlier, and ever since then we've just seen lower highs and lower lows. So that's another lower high, and I think we could possibly see a lower low here. This could go all the way down to $66. That might be a good point to jump in there and catch that small rally back up. It tends to fill its gaps, as you can see here. We got in end of July to see if it would fill those gaps, and indeed it did. But when we came close to this resistance line, we got really concerned. And sure enough, we pulled out of that, and it just dropped right back into that bear market. Good decisions on that. We ended up making a little bit of profit on that. So maybe if we get down to that 66 line, might be time to pull in into the iFund a little bit as it continues its downward trend from there. On a technical perspective, one of the reasons we moved into this fund is because we were coming out on the weekly chart, and that still seems to be the case. We moved from negative, even with that 2% drop, we moved from negative 2.39 to 2.21. If we have another really big drop week, I could see this being a weekly fake out, and then we would want to stay away from it completely. On a 2-day chart, we are not going to get back into this fund until we have the 2-day back on our side, and we do not have that, but we will be watching closely as our other indices such as the S fund just don't look as good. I'd rather be in a positive weekly chart coming out of a negative than a downtrending chart for the most part with VXF. So that is EFA, and of course we'll move to our last stock, which is the F fund or bonds AGG ETF. And like we've mentioned with AGG, this fund has really struggled all year long, guys. It has not been that great. I have not suggested being in this fund, and I just see it. It's just another fund that just is making lower highs and continues to make lower highs, and stocks outperform this by a large margin. As you can see for our funds, if we look at it, for TSP or the AGG funds, this is bonds and this is your stock funds. And as you can see for the year, this fund is the only one that's not beating is the iFund. So just keep that in mind. With AGG, we're at the back of the top of our range, so I would expect it to drop again. And based off our indicators and probability, we are coming down off a weekly chart. Really have not seen any real good price action since June 1st, so it's been stagnant all summer long. I would expect it to see probably come back down to the 105 line, somewhere in the 105 line or area. On a 2-day chart, it looks like it's trying to come on its way out, but we still have the blue line below the red line. I'd stay away from this for a while, and we'll see what happens with it. So that's, for the most part, a majority of our funds for TSP and whatnot. Where do we have our funds allocated? As you can see, for Top Notch Channel, we are still sitting in about 66% in the IVV or C fund and about 33% in the S fund. We could possibly see a move. Like we said, we only have one ITF left for the month. I am a TSP user, so we only get 2 moves a month typically, And with that, I don't want to just be sitting in the G fund if we see a breakout for some reason. So we're going to hold on a little bit longer until we see the I fund take either the C fund start reflecting some of the S fund things, or the S fund start reflecting the C fund things before we make a move. Or we see the I fund get so low to the point where we could get in, possibly make a little profit off that bear market. But until then, we are right here with 66 and 33%. Please like, subscribe, or share this channel. Really appreciate your guys' support. My question for you guys is, do you think this is a good place to have your funds allocated for the week? And that's another top-notch video. We'll see you guys next time.